Hey, free timers. Do you remember those old passbook savings accounts? Some of you might not. Think of them as a paper-based banking app before smartphones existed. In this episode, we're giving that boring relic a modern makeover because cash deserves a starring role in your time freedom money strategy. It's what protects you in emergencies and lets you pounce on opportunities. And when the timing's right, that cash can earn you 100% return by helping you act fast. Let's get on with the show. Welcome back to the Time Freedom Podcast, where you can learn how to rethink your work and your money to create a life you love right now. Join us for insights to help you find meaningful freedom so you can choose how and when and with whom you work for as long as you want. Here are your hosts, me, Brian Herriot, and Kirby Denison. Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Time Freedom Podcast. I am Brian Herriot, joined with my co-host, Kirby Denison. Welcome back. We were just chatting before we started recording that in our first season, we have just 6 more episodes. We record these at 3 at a time. And so after today, we'll just have 3 more to go, which is absolutely crazy. But anyway, today, I'll introduce the topic quickly and then we'll catch up with each other briefly before we dive in. But today we're going to talk about cash and not just, actual dollar bills. What I'm talking about is cash equivalent money market savings account, money that you are saving, usually described as something for short term. You're not investing it in the stock market. It's this kind of boring thing that I believe is one of the secrets to what you need to include in order to live a life of time freedom. And so we're going to dive deep into that. And when I hear myself say it, it sounds really boring, but I promise you it will not be. I have some interesting things I think I can tell you. And also I've got some stories about my dad playing tennis when I was a kid. Anyway, so let me introduce first Kirby Denison, hailing from Colorado. She's the owner of Kirby & Co. and is a coach and a fractional COO and provides other virtual assistant services to her clients who love her. And she will be co-hosting with me today.
Yes. Thanks, Brian. And as we know, Brian is the author of Time Freedom and speaker. And we have really some exciting news about the book too. We've been working with Mike and Adela, and Brian, do you want to share a little bit of where we're at?
Yeah, sure. So the Mike Kirby's referring to is Mike Michalowicz, and Adela is his daughter, but also like a literary agent and marketing lead that we're working with as part of Mike Michalowicz's team. Mike was the author of Profit First, is his most recognizable book. It's a top-selling book. He's also an author of several other books, but I got associated with him kind of through this book writing process. And we're talking with them. I'm actually part of his imprint that he has with another publishing company called Page 2. It's called Simplified. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more once it happens. But in December, I'm heading down to meet up with several other authors that are part of this imprint, and we're going to Austin. I've never been to Austin, Texas before, so I'm excited about that. I'm actually trying to figure out, she doesn't know it yet, but my sister lives in Dallas, and I'm going to see if I can see Laura while I'm down there. It's been a while since I visited.
Well,
but we're doing a lot of exciting things. So say again, yes, spoiler alert, Laura, if you hear this.
I mean, yeah, if she's listening, and yes, depending on when this comes out.
Yes, all those ifs.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, so just a lot of fun and exciting things to do. But yeah, so what have you been up to, Kirby?
Well, let's start off with, I was able to share a funny story with Brian, and he was like, oh, that sounds like a podcast update. We were actually working cows this week. On Sunday, my grandparents have a ranch, and so we have cows. And this time of year, we always sort the calves off, work them so that they can go to sale. And that's kind of, how he makes his money. I spent the week recovering because I was charged by a cow on Sunday. And thankfully, my wrist was not broken. However, it's still not 100%. I do not recommend wearing an Apple Watch if you're doing anything slightly dangerous.
I'm looking for the Voxer message that you sent me because it was just so funny because I had no context and I didn't know what the heck you were talking about. I can't find it. I wish I could. But I'm glad that
it was.
So it's not broken.
No, it's not broken. Okay, let me see if I could find it really quick. Let's
It
see.
just said broke my wrist, was charged by a cow or something. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
charged by a cow?
Uh,
Like,
Monday afternoon, I ended up having to get x-rays on my wrist, got charged by a cow, facepalm emoji. Brian.
I
Okay,
didn't
that's a podcast story.
I didn't know what I didn't even think like charged. What, like charged money? That's what I first thought. And then I'm like, wait,
Oh,
what?
yeah. Well, yeah, she was not happy and she got me.
Oh,
So
wow.
the life in rural Colorado or rural America, maybe, I don't know.
Well, this was the weekend. I spent the weekend at one of Theo's soccer tournaments. So this is where you spend basically all day, both days of the weekend, watching games and then waiting for either watching or waiting for games. And I'll tell you, like youth sports is supposed to be fun, right? On Saturday night, they played under the lights against this team that was like 2 levels up. And I've never seen them play so well. Like they were down 2-0, then they were down 2-1. And they were like, I've never seen Theo hustle so hard in my life. He was like on defense guarding 2 people at the same time. And they played so well that it seemed like they won, even though they lost. It was the strangest thing. So they lost, but I didn't even feel upset about it. Although I was extremely nervous, and some of the other parents were like, "This is like the hardest game to watch ever," when it's so
Yeah.
close. But it was really, really, really exciting, and it got me thinking back to a lot of some of the youth sports that I played, which then actually is a lead into our topic for today. If I can dive into that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So my sport was tennis, not soccer. I don't know anything about soccer, which is great as a parent because I can't yell things to the kids because I really don't know what I'm watching. But I played a lot of tennis because my dad played a lot of tennis. And when I was in high school, I had one of those moments. I was playing, I don't know, singles, probably number 2, because there was a younger kid on the team who was way better than me. But we played against this team. They were Fond du Lac Goodrich. That was the name of the school. And this player was incredible. And somehow I was in the first set. I beat him like 6-1 because no matter what I hit, it would go in. It was like if you ever talk about or hear about that concept of flow, like when you're in the flow state and like you don't even know how you're doing these things, it's just happening. It was probably the only time I've ever felt that in my life, but it was absolutely incredible. But the problem was it only lasted one set. So after that incredible set, I lost the next 2, like love six, and lost the match. But I was thinking back to that, and that actually reminded me of another story, which and the reason why I'm talking about this is this concept of cash accounts and the way that amateurs, and I'm considered an amateur, like we're not professional investors here, the way that amateur investors win in the money game is by not losing. All right, so think about that. You don't win by winning, you win by not losing. And the perfect analogy to this is tennis. And I learned about this first in a book. The author was Charles Ellis. This is a book that's now in its like 9th or 10th edition. Charles Ellis wrote this book, Winning the Loser's Game, Timeless Strategies for Successful Investing. And he told this concept about how you win by not losing. And so let me give you just another example. So that was not effective for me. When I was 8, I think when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9, I would travel around with my sister and we'd go to my dad's tennis matches. And he was a big amateur tennis player and played against all these different people. And my dad was a big hitter. He hit huge serves and powerful spin shots and all these things. And he used to like relish the fact that he was teaching me to be a good player because he would spin his left-handed serve and hit me with it. Not in a mean way, but he's like, you're going to have to learn how to hit that back. Anyway, he used to play this guy. His name was Peter Chan. He was another wonderful tennis player, but they had completely different styles. So my dad would hit like super powerful and Mr. Chan would just like slowly hit it back nicely. And my dad was like dominating this one match. And then all of a sudden he just lost a point and then he lost another point. Mr. Chan would, play like every point was its own point. He didn't even know if he was way up or way down. And he just never made a mistake. And my dad then, went from like hitting all these awesome shots to starting to hit them in the net and out and like over the fence, which my sister and I loved because we'd have to go run and get the balls. And anyway, he ended up losing that match. And I remember riding home with my dad that night when we were riding back up the hill to our house. And he said, we have a lesson here that we can learn from Mr. Chan. It's that you just have to take each point one by one.
Mhm.
I mean, I've listened, I've thought of that for many years, but later when I read that book about tennis and how you win by not losing, it made so much sense to me. Like when you become a professional, you win by winning, because
Mhm.
nobody's making mistakes. But when you're new to this or you're new and it totally translates into the money piece, especially as it relates to time freedom, is that you have to be careful not to lose. And that's what this whole episode is about. It's why you have and you should value this cash account, this high yield savings or this money market account that you have so much.
Yeah, I think that actually when you were talking about not first a couple things. When you're talking about not knowing anything about soccer so you can't yell, I am not that way. I am that way with soccer. Volleyball and basketball, not that way. Totally the person in the stands yelling at whatever either
You're going to
side.
have to be careful or you're going to be asked to leave. I've seen it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, we had a few of those in high school, but I that's an interesting concept of like him not realizing like where it was and where you said that, a point is a point, regardless if you're winning or losing. Every time you just show up the same. And that's a lot of times like in coaching, for business coaching, you can do the same. You show up the same way and like, yes, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. But if you keep showing up consistently, it's like the consistency piece.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree with that. So let me just kind of address the part about cash accounts that, why it gets a bad name. In the investing world, the stock market's gone up so much for so long, like 45 years basically. Like, sure, it's had its downs, but it's just continually gone up. And so people are operating from this mindset of it's always going to go up. And the argument that they say about if you have your money in like a passbook savings account or a high yield savings account is that you're missing out on the opportunity to earn more money on your cash. I think, though, that if you have cash, it's not only protecting you in case of an emergency, if something comes up, that's one use of it. It can also help with if the stock market were to go down, you could use that cash to put money into the stock market where you wouldn't have otherwise been able to. This is my example from 2007, 2008, when I was actively investing during the great financial crisis of those years. And I remember thinking, boy, the stock market's so low. Now would be a great time to invest some more money. But I didn't have any more because I didn't have any money available in cash. I was like fully invested. But then also, not only that, but the money that you have set aside in cash savings can be used opportunistically. You can, when presented with some sort of investment opportunity, or you want to invest in yourself, you want to write a book and do it well, you can use that money to invest in yourself. And that, if you look at it that way, that money actually might deliver more for you on in terms of a percentage return than what you could get even in the stock market. So there's just so many ways that you can use this cash account. But I think like more than any of those is just the fact that when you have this amount of money set aside that's not going to go down, it is very freeing. You can leave a difficult work environment. You can choose to do a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to do if you're kind of living, paycheck to paycheck or on the edge. And that even counts if you have a lot of money invested in stocks and bonds. Like you're still kind of living, riskily. I don't know if that's a word. Quite risky, or a risky way of living. So that's why I believe in cash savings so much.
Yeah, and I'm excited to kind of get more in depth of like the different types of cash savings because I know that there are, a lot of different ways. I mean, you have your normal, standard savings
Yeah.
account, you have your money market accounts. And I think that's kind of where we're headed next.
Yeah,
Anyway.
let me just, and this will not be kind of a thorough review of everything. And also, sometimes the question is, so if you list all these different places that you can store your cash, which has the highest returns? And I mean, my comment around that is this is, of course, you want to get the highest return you can, but this is not the point of the cash savings account. It's not really to earn as high amount. You want it to be safe and available to you. And usually all of these places are within 1% of each other. So they all work, but probably the most understood one is the high yield savings account. So this is your typical savings account. It's often though at like an online institution like Ally Bank or somewhere like that, where because they don't have physical branches, they don't have a lot of expenses. And so they can offer higher returns on the savings. So high yield savings is one. A money market fund is another one. Be careful here though, because you want your money market fund to be at a low cost provider like a Vanguard, or the percent charge on a money market fund should be quite low. And that then means that all of the return goes to you. So, there are federally backed money market funds, other types of money market funds that you can get. I'm most familiar with those from Vanguard. You can also there's exchange traded funds that map to treasury bills, which are the shortest term United States super short term bond. They call the treasury bill. And the reason you may not want to buy those treasury bills directly is that it's very challenging and difficult to buy them and sell them and whatnot. But if there's an ETF that tracks them, you can just buy and sell the ETF to get in and out of it pretty easily. So those are really like the main three things. But again, I wouldn't overthink it. I would work it where it's convenient for you and make sure that, you just don't have a lot of expenses being charged.
Yeah, I'm curious about the Vanguard. I'm not super familiar with the ones like at Vanguard.
Mhm.
However, I know a lot of like your local institutions have money markets. Like I know at the bank that I worked at, obviously we had money markets. And as a lender, we saw that a lot too, is like people with cash in their money markets. What are like the rates, at Vanguard compared to more of a commercial bank? Do you know?
I would say they're probably a little bit higher, but they're only going to be like 0.5% higher, I'm
Okay.
guessing, because the commercial banks, have infrastructure that they have to fund. And
Mhm.
so they're going to take a little bit more off the top.
Yeah, and I
Um,
know we, like, adjusted ours based on, like, whatever our cost of funds were, and like you said, like, the
yeah.
different treasury bills and that type of stuff at a commercial bank, that all goes into it, but
Another thing too is to look, they'll have usually introductory offers, for the
Mhm.
first 3 or 6 months. It's this rate, then it drops down. I actually got caught on that semi recently. And I'm like, wait, why am I earning so little now? And they're like, oh, that's because, after 6 months, it dropped way down. But that's
Mm.
usually on the high yield savings accounts. The money
Okay.
markets are usually more consistent. So I wanted to remind us of that barbell type of investing strategy around time freedom that we talked about last week. And if you remember, it's where you have kind of the two types of investing that you're doing on the right side. If you think of it on a piece of paper, is kind of the higher risk, higher returning things that we talked about last week. Now we're talking about the cash, which is on the more conservative, safer, lower returning side. And we're looking for that appropriate balance. And I'm not going to get too much into, well, how much cash should we have and how much
Mhm.
investment should we have, because that's our topic for next week. But just know that what I wanted to use this episode for is to just really help us understand why that cash is so important. And maybe now's the right time to talk about this concept of loss asymmetry, which again, like you kind of know this, but you don't really think about it. And this is, I think, another argument for why it's so important to not lose money. Actually, I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but Warren Buffett has a lot of famous sayings that he is always quoted for, like, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when
Mhm.
others are fearful, and, buy for the long term and never sell. Well, there's another kind of his 2 rules of investing. Sounds like an important thing. Like, give me the 2 rules of investing. They are: number 1, don't lose money. And number 2, look at rule number 1. Right. It's extremely important. And I actually write in my book about a story of his. So one of the things I love about him is that he talks about his investing mistakes.
Mhm.
And one of them was when he invested some money in Dexter Shoe Company. It's Dexter. Yeah, I recognized it, but not many people may. But he bought it at the wrong time. He bought it with Berkshire Hathaway stock, and I think within 5 years it went to zero. And he calculated what that cost him. And then the problem was that he didn't just pay cash for it and then lost it all. He paid stock out of Berkshire Hathaway. So as the value of that stock keeps going up, it makes you realize how that loss basically keeps going up. And so he just lost so much money. But the mathematical concept that I want to teach you is this loss asymmetry. And what it basically, well, here, let me give you an example. So and some people get this quickly and some people don't, but let's say you have $100 and it drops 50%. Okay. To get back to even, what percent do you think you'd need to get, to earn on that money that just dropped 50%? I mean, you don't have to
Well,
answer it,
I
or
was like,
unless,
I should know this. I
well,
mean,
what most people would think is 50%.
50%. Yeah.
It drops 50%. So
But
it
I
needs to
also
go back up
know that it's
50%.
not that. And
Right.
I can't remember the percentage.
It is, if think of it, you have $100, it drops 50%. So now it's worth 50. To
Okay.
get $50 earned on $50 that you have now, it's 100%. So
Oh, yeah.
to recover from a 50% loss, you need a 100% gain. That is math. It, what, so if you were to kind of map those numbers out, what do you need to gain from a 10% loss? Actually, I have the cheat sheet. From a 10% loss, you need an 11% gain. So kind of similar. Even if you go like a 20% loss, you need a 25% gain, a little bit worse, but not too bad. But as you start getting lower and lower, it gets bigger and bigger. So the worst is when you get all the way down to like a 90% loss. So your $100 went down to 10. Now you need to get back to 100. You need a 900% gain to get back up to even, not to get past, but just to get back up to even. So the lesson here is that recovering from a loss is harder than just experiencing the loss itself. And so that's, again, argument for why you don't want to lose money if at all possible. Or the more very specific advice is, don't try to keep your losses to 20-25% max if you have to, because even at 20-25%, you have to gain 25 to 33% back up. It's kind of close, but once you get past that, it gets very, very difficult to move things back up. And so the lesson here is that if your stock market crashes happen, so if you've got money in the right side of that barbell and it drops 50%, you don't want to sell that money. So you need to then have adequate amount of money over in your safe amount that you can live off of, combined with work that you're continuing to do, so that you don't have to withdraw from that money when it's down so far. Now, we're going to talk in a couple episodes from now about another way of looking at investing that will help protect you from going all the way down to 50%. But for now, for kind of the everyday, person that, utilizing strategies that are available to you and me that we're kind of familiar with a little bit, that's another reason for holding cash, is so that you can pay, or so that you can rely on it when you have losses that are way down the table on the loss asymmetry table.
Yeah. So kind of like the last, kind of dip in the market, what was like, would you say that it got down to? I honestly, like
I
during
know,
COVID, I know that it dropped. I never even looked because I was too afraid.
right?
What like was that percentage? And kind of, I mean, do you think that most people have bounced back from that now, or where do you think that is?
So the one that I'm most familiar with, because it was so life-changing for me, was the COVID crash, and it was 35%. That's what the market
35%.
went down. So a
Okay.
35% down, meaning it had
Mhm.
to go 54% to get back up, which it did. And it
Mhm.
did for many reasons. These things do happen, but the key is, like, they don't always have to just come back so fast. That's the
Mhm.
crazy, like, we just remember the recent past. And so I'm glad I had that experience, so that I'm aware now that I should look further back,
Mhm.
because, sometimes recoveries take a long time, and I don't want my investing strategy to be clouded by the fact that I just assume that the Federal Reserve is going to come and pump money in and push everything back up again, because that may not be the case always,
Mhm.
going into the future. In 2022, I think, was the last pretty bad year for the stock market. I don't actually know what it was, because I was investing using this other strategy, and my losses, I think, were limited to around 20%. But it was 20, 25. It got down probably about that much. And again, it's definitely more than back and recovered. We're way back
Right.
up. We're probably even in an AI bubble right now, everyone keeps saying. So, again, the timing of this episode isn't great, because everyone will think, well, the stock market's way up. Why do I need to care about this? But this is an evergreen episode. So listen to this in a year or two or three when things are down, and you'll know you should have done this.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say too, is I remember, I mean, obviously I was still pretty new in like looking even at my retirement stuff at COVID. But like back in 2008, that it didn't recover that fast. And so you are correct in that. I remember during COVID, like they talked about how fast it recovered and, that was historically the fastest or whatever. That is good to remember. It's not going to always come back that fast. And I guess the other question that kind of just came in is that, if it takes longer for it to recover, that's just that much more the percentage, right? That
Yeah.
almost like that you're losing.
The length of time it takes to recover is almost as bad as how far down it was in the first place. Or for the type of people we're speaking to about time freedom. Because if you were early in your career, like I was in 2000, or even in 2007 and 8, you're going to be working forever. You're not even looking at using that money that you're putting away for retirement. And so you're not even kind of aware it's not that big of a deal. In the year 2000, it took 10 years to recover. So the S&P 500 got back to where it started in 2010 after it started dropping in 2000s. The 10 years. Now, the people I didn't get impacted by that, and you probably didn't either. We didn't have much to invest. We were so far away from needing to use that money, it didn't matter. If anything, it was great because we got things on a discount because we were investing when it was low. The challenge is when you need to use the money. So if you you had retired in 2000 and you thought you had this amount of money to live off of, all of a sudden it drops and you're starting to pull money out. Those poor people, a lot of them had to go back to work later in life or just do some drastic reduction in spending. And so that's why, you have to be careful for how deep it goes because of loss asymmetry, but then also for how long you go. And the way, from the time freedom formula perspective that you can help with this is that's why I advocate working for so long. Right now, I'm not saying working in a job that you hate and terrible hours and high stress. I'm just talking about finding that great work that you could do for a long time, even if it's part-time, because it helps relieve the pressure in case there is a down market and it's down for a while. So you have the cash, which we've talked about this episode, and that kind of long-term flexible work that can kind of help you until that recovery happens. And then in a couple episodes from now, we're going to talk about another strategy that's designed to limit the downside and also recover faster, get back up to even faster, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's the exciting part. And I was just going to round out the episode and say, obviously, the cash that we're talking about today is, how we can also help mitigate that. So do you have any closing thoughts for today's episode?
I would just say when someone tells you, you should not hold so much cash because you're missing out on an opportunity, disagree with that person, because we'll talk next episode about how much you should hold. But that cash that you have makes you feel free, and it can be used in emergencies and it can be used for opportunities. There's so much that cash can do, even if it's only earning you 3.5%, which it probably is earning about right now. So that's my advice. It's hard to disagree with the masses, but that's why we're doing this, right, Kirby?
Yes, that's exactly why we're doing it. We're thinking outside the box.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
One thing I'll mention, and then I'll let you close the episode out, but don't forget to visit us at timefreedom.life. And there you can sign up for our Time Freedom Insiders Club. That gets you early access to chapter 1 and actually audio of the entire book. Eventually, I'm slowly reading through it. This week I read, I'll have read through chapter 5 already. Hard to believe. But you can get all the ins and outs of everything that we're working on there. Please join us, timefreedom.life.
And don't forget to like and subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're tuning in. All those reviews will help us.
We'll see you next week.